It's been just over 2 years now since the original announcement that the Total Drama Island series was going to be getting a revival of sorts. Lots of speculation went on during the time in between about how the cast was going to fare compared to others, but most importantly, if this new season was going to at least be decent quality overall. The Total Drama competitions started off extremely strong, but definitely began to dwindle in quality a bit after Revenge of the Island, but at least ending off on a fairly solid note with the Redonkulous race before Total Drama Rama essentially became the face of Total Drama from 2018 until now. Although the marketing for this new season has definitely been questionable, now that it's out there in the wild, the most important thing at this point is, does this new season at least hold up to the likes of Revenge of the Island and Redonkulous race? Short answer, yeah, it really does. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, the almost non-existent marketing for these seasons was a big reason as to why I had next to no motivation to really even talk about the little bit of information that was leading up to actual episodes dropping. Regardless, I'm still glad I checked out this season anyway. Per expected, this season goes back to the original Camp Wawanakwa, with Chris McLean hosting, Chef as his right-hand man, and a brand new group of campers. The first thing you'd probably notice right off the bat from this first episode is Chris sounds completely different. Christian Potenza now replaced by Terry McGurran, who also voiced Don in the Redonkulous race. At first it felt a little bit weird to get used to because Christian Potenza's Chris became pretty iconic, to be honest. The guy voiced the host of this show for so long, so to not have him reprise his role for this return was unfortunate to find out. However, Terry McGurran did a really solid job as Chris. I got used to him pretty quick, and I think he's doing a good job at carrying out this character. Chris is still the same nutcase as before though, loves torturing these children and wants to make sure you know how much he loves doing it. There was this one joke with him that it felt like they overused a bit here, like in multiple episodes. Everyone would be in the middle of a challenge and Chris would go, "Oh, be sure to watch out for that insert dangerous thing here." Then the campers would be like, "Huh? These are here now? What do you mean?" Followed by Chris wondering how he forgot or pretending that he forgot before saying he didn't mention it intentionally. It got old pretty quick for me. There's also the theme song, which changed quite a bit. Not a huge fan of this theme song, to be honest, but I mean, at least they kept the "I want to be famous" part, so there's at least a little bit I can appreciate. Chef felt a lot more tame compared to the previous Total Drama seasons too. Instead of the usual rough around the edges hard ass from the originals, he acted more like a voice of reason to Chris during a lot of the challenges, not wanting stuff to go too far out of fear of the producers giving them backlash. I don't really remember much of Total Drama Rama's episodes content since I never really watched much of it to begin with, but it seems like they were going for more of Chef's Drama Rama personality here than how he was in the standard seasons from the originals. Even wearing the same suit and tie with no Chef's hat anymore, which he wore in Total Drama Rama. I didn't necessarily consider this a bad thing per se, it just felt kind of weird. Was already getting pretty used to the idea of Chef being a lot less involved anyway, since that's what it started to feel like from All Stars to now. But now for the most important part of this season, at least to me, the new characters and or contestants. Overall, this cast felt a lot more likable than the likes of Pakatu Island's cast for sure. A big problem with that cast is it felt like the character interactions were just very bare bones, hardly anyone forming proper, even friendships with one another. The camaraderie, even between teammates, just felt non-existent a lot of the time. This was greatly improved upon here, though. A big factor that seemed to give this season an advantage in this regard from the jump was certain characters already knowing each other before even going out of the show, like Wayne and Raj being these super close hockey buddies, or Chase and Enema being an ex-couple that broke up on really bad terms, and they have to deal with that throughout the time they're on the season. It made for a lot more interesting character interactions. The Redonkulous race probably did this the best since the way that show was set up, all the pairs already had pre-existing connections. Of course, there doesn't have to be those connections ahead of time for a season to work. The original Total Drama Island is a shining example of this. But I feel like with these formats of only 13 episodes for the entire competition instead of 26, it definitely helps to have these pre-established. Revenge of the Island made it work without any fairly well too, and mainly thanks to how well characters like Mike, Zoe, and Cameron meshed with each other. The love triangle with Mike, Zoe, and Anne Maria, and Scott being a silent antagonist as well. The only pre-existing connection prior to the Pakatu Island competition was between the twins of Amy and Sammy, which wasn't very enjoyable to watch because it was just one of the sisters being a total scumbag to the other for literally no reason other than because she's older, so she thinks she deserves more. It's just, ugh. When I look at the newest cast members, there really isn't a single one that I completely dislike. Ripper was maybe the only one that came a little bit close at one point. This guy felt like a bit of a fusion between Duncan and Owen, but more bare bones in terms of personality. A guy who ripped ass a lot, but acted like a bit of a bully at the same time. He was one of those those bully types that I feel like you'd see in a cheesy 80s movie, at least when it came to his insults. Like anytime somebody said something that sounded even slightly intelligent, he'd start calling them a nerd over and over. Granted, it felt like he mellowed out a little as time went on and at least tried to help take his team to victory in challenges, even if he used somewhat questionable methods. My favorites, just off the top of my head, were probably Bowie, Julia, Priya, the Hockey Bros, and Damien. Bowie and Julia absolutely killed it as antagonists this season. Bowie definitely felt like more of a secondary antagonist compared to Julia, though. He wasn't constantly going out of his way to screw people over at the same level as Julia was, but was definitely on the sneakier side and didn't have a problem doing the occasional backstabbing if it meant getting him further to the top. A very strong player all around. I can't forget how he's the first openly gay contestant in Total Drama either. Not afraid to show it off rip either, which was definitely a plus. It's great how the crew working on Total Drama is being a lot more inclusive by now adding openly LGBT characters into the mix. Julia was very good too. I honestly wasn't expecting her to become such a villain when I saw her at the start. The twist with her being some kind of Instagram influencer who tries to sell fake positivity with meditation videos, when in reality she's a very nasty person who gets joy out of others' pain and misery. What I liked even more was after she was exposed for this behavior, she was upset at first, but began to actually embrace her true self on social media, which in turn started getting her an even bigger following than before, which is something that I'm sure people have seen with other real-life creators. Creators who started off as, super positive or fairly normal people and eventually turned into terrible people, or just rather showing their true colors. But instead of changing themselves for the better, they just continued to act bad because it actually helped them cater to a new and bigger audience of crazy scumbag people. It's a real thing of how toxic communities or fan bases can get formed online. So I loved how Julia was handled in that regard. It felt very real. The interactions between her and Bowie were always fun because it felt very similar to the interactions between Heather and Alejandro, which were two characters that bounced off very well together in Total Drama World Tour especially. Wayne and Raj's friendship was probably one of the best representations between two friends in all of Total Drama. The way the two of them supported each other no matter what was so nice. Raj being gay and also scared to come out of the closet, while Wayne was just dying for Raj to tell him because he just wants to shower his buddy with as much support as possible. Sure, they weren't the most intelligent guys, but they had hearts the size of Texas. Z was another really good one. He had that stoner vibe going, but he was very chill as a result, kind, and pretty funny at times too. It came as a bit of a surprise to me when he was revealed to be disabled with only one human leg, having to use different prosthetic ones throughout the course of his time on screen, so it was cool to have even more inclusivity by having him disabled. He did have this weird way of telling tall tales to other campers about how he quote-unquote lost his leg, which they would believe every time, even if it was a different story, when in reality he was just born without it. Damien was just a good all-rounder. There were times where he kind of reminded me a bit of Dave, at least the part of him that wanted to be voted off so badly that he made vote out Damien buttons. Dave literally did the exact same thing in his elimination episode on Pocketoo. Granted, there's been so many characters throughout the Total Drama series at this point that there's bound to be some overlaps and traits that can be easy to compare to other characters, like Axel talking about a zombie apocalypse during your introduction, then proceeding to kill a cardboard zombie that's literally designed after Sean. Damien was someone I just wish we got to see more of because it was sad to see him go right as he felt like he was getting used to the challenges. I suppose that's kind of the trend for a lot of Total Drama characters though. Some characters are just bound to get more in-depth story arcs than others because of the guaranteed eliminations at the end of every episode. Damien wound up overcoming his fears and finding motivation, but it was too late. Raj came out to Wayne as gay, but they both got too injured to compete, so they left. Chase and Emma got back together, then Chase gets voted off. You get the gist of it. It's a good thing that it sounds like the second part of these 26 total episodes will include the same cast because there's some characters I'd love to see make it further than the first time. Damien's obviously a big one. MK too. It's too bad that MK's confessional plan got found out so early by Julia because I really liked the way she was going about that. Caleb too, of course. Bowie did that guy pretty dirty from the get-go. Scary girl Lauren would be cool to have around a little bit longer because she did seem like a pretty strong competitor. I just hope her old shtick of acting like a serial killer doesn't get too old for me. I know she's become quite a fan favorite at this point, but I'm not too keen on her. I still like her a decent bit though. Priya and Millie's friendship felt pretty well thought out too, mainly on the Millie side of things because she had to deal with this inner conflict of whether or not to continue her research about her generation or to tell Priya the truth, drop her research, and realize that Priya's friendship has become more valuable to her than writing a book about Gen Z being weird. This was a very solid storyline that I'm glad went the distance, all the way to the finale at that. At one point I thought Priya might have been a bit too harsh on Millie since in a way Millie was kind of right about Priya's parents being insane. They essentially raised a child for the sole purpose of existing to win Total Drama. But at the same time, this isn't any of Millie's business business to spread to the public without Priya's consent. Millie being all secretive about the journal when Priya was just asking about it instantly at one point didn't help Millie's case either. It wasn't Bowie's place to leak this information, though Millie still should have told her the truth sooner. Thankfully, Millie was able to learn from her mistakes and reconcile with Priya after telling Priya what she wrote at the end of her journal, about how terrible she felt about writing all those bad things about Priya's parents. While I agree Priya's parents do suck, I'm glad Priya won and Bowie was her final opponent. Our girl can finally go to medical school now. The final challenge felt a teeny bit underwhelming compared to other previous finales, like the one in World Tour especially, but it was still passable. It was cool to see the concept of the 3-person finale return, which I believe was only done one other time in Total Drama World Tour, correct? There's probably a lot more that I could talk about when it comes to this season, but I think I covered all the major bases here. If I had to give it a rating out of 10, I think I would give it a solid 7.5, maybe 8. Some of the things holding it back were how certain challenges were executed, I'd say. That one episode where it was just an entire episode dedicated to farts was definitely not the most fun to sit through. I know these kinds of jokes have always been around in Total Drama since the beginning, I get it, but an entire episode about them, that felt like a bit much for my taste. I'm really hoping the next 13 episodes will be able to deliver the same, if not higher quality than these first 13 did. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this season, if you've seen it all or just some of it. I would love to know your thoughts. Of course, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe for more content like this in the future. But for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.